See, now, here's the thing that people don't understand about speech, is when you go out of your way to try to censor speech for other people because you find it offensive, at some point it is going to come back and bite you, because karma is a bitch, my friends. Now, here's the thing. I am not in favor of censoring speech under really any circumstances. I just don't think, I think it's a very slippery slope. Once you say it's okay for this person, then it becomes okay for them to censor another person, and then eventually they're going to come for you. So I generally am not in favor of this under any circumstances, even if I disagree with what the person is saying or the message that they are sending. That is not my business. The only thing that I'm worried about is my speech not being censored at some point in the future. So if you want your right to free speech protected, you have to defend the rights of the people that you disagree with. And so when I saw this article pop up about a Black Lives Matter activist getting kicked off an airplane, not because she wasn't wearing a mask, but because the airline didn't like what her mask said, I have to admit, I'm not in favor of that happening. I'm not in favor of it, but I had to laugh a little bit because this is entirely predictable. It was always absolutely going to happen, and I was honestly just curious about when this was going to happen. You all know how I feel about mask mandates. I do not believe that wearing these masks should be mandated. I believe it should be voluntary. I believe that people should be a hell of a lot more forgiving than they're being of people who aren't wearing masks, because you have no idea what medical conditions they might have, what emotional conditions they might have that might make it really difficult at best on a good day for them to wear a mask, especially if we're talking about being on an airplane or in an airport for an extended period of time all day long. I think we should be much more forgiving of people, and I don't believe in mandating that adults do things. I think that's not what you do in a free society. However, if we're going to go through this absurd exercise, then I'm damn well going to wear what I want to on the mask that I have been mandated to wear by the airline. I'm flying on Friday. I'm going to Los Angeles for the walkaway rally. I'm gonna have to wear a mask all flippin' day because it's a 6-hour flight from Boston to LA. It's not gonna be the most fun thing in the world. I'm wearing my MAGA mask. I already know it's a and by the way, it's not just because it's a MAGA mask, and I do enjoy that aspect of it. Also, it's just really comfortable for me to wear. I can wear it in a way that I can breathe, all that good stuff. And I don't want anyone to be able to censor me wearing a MAGA mask because someone on the plane might get offended by it. And that is exactly what happened here. So we're going to read this article and talk about what happened to this lady and why it was almost inevitable, partially because of the environment that she has created through the course of her own actions. And I'm going to tell you what I think about it. But before we get into that, listen, folks, I'm trying to grow the channel, trying to really hit 100,000 subscribers before Election Day. I think this is totally doable. So if you like the content I'm creating, please subscribe, turn on those notifications, give the video a thumbs up. If you think you're subscribed, just go ahead and double check for me, because you never know, YouTube may have unsubscribed you magically by pure accident, I'm sure, even though they do it hundreds at a time, from my channel. So just double check and make sure you're still good. All right, this is from a local news website. Activist kicked off American Airlines plane after flight attendant deems her mask offensive. Now, first thing I want to say this. Don't fly American Airlines. American Airlines sucks. First of all, I've always had a bone to pick with American Airlines. As long as I have been flying, I have avoided American Air like the plague because they're awful. They have awful customer service. Anytime I have gotten stuck overnight somewhere, except for one time it happened on Delta and it was not their fault, but like every other time I've gotten stuck overnight when I've been traveling, universally it has been American Airlines. They've always been a giant pain in the ass. They're like, American Airlines is like the entitled, like, white fucking college student who thinks that they're a victim of everything and is always angry. That's like what American Airlines is the SJW of airlines, and not just because they're doing nonsense like this. Don't fly American. Delta is far superior to American. I mean, occasionally I'll fly Southwest. Those are really the two that I fly if I have to, because they're the ones that actually treat their customers well. And the other point I want to make about this too is, why is it the flight attendant that gets to decide what is acceptable speech on a mask that you are mandating I wear. We'll get into that as we read the article. A woman was kicked off an American Airlines flight and forced to drive thousands of miles to get where she was going. Well, conceivably, she could have just booked another flight. Maybe not on American, because here's the other bone I have to pick with American, is they screwed Brandon Straka. They really did. You know, when Brandon made national news for not wearing a mask on an American Airlines flight, and then, you know, they kicked him off the plane and put him on like a no-fly list. So screw you, American, for real, because that was just absolutely uncalled for. And I actually talked to Brandon after that, and he said to me, he was like, Carlin, they never even asked if I had a medical issue. They just assumed that I didn't and kicked me off the flight. So American can also go to hell for that other reason. She told Local 10 News, Lyron Livingston, what a great news name that is, that she thinks it was a racial issue. According to its conditions of carriage, American Airlines says offensive clothing is not allowed. Who gets to decide? Who is the decider of what is offensive and what is not? Aralinda Johns told Livingston that she boarded her flight wearing a mask. Because of what was written on it, she was asked to cover it up. She did. Several minutes later, the plane she was on was about to take off, busted a U-turn, went back to the gate, and she was escorted off the plane. Can we just take a moment to appreciate that there is an actual news article on an actual news website that says a plane busted a U-turn? I just find that absurd. In a very positive way. I think I got taken off the plane because I'm black, John said. My mask said F12 and my shirt says Black Lives Matter. Most people know her as Trey. She's a South Florida activist. The mask is a reference to law enforcement. Essentially, she's saying F the police with her mask. And again, this is not messaging that I'm in favor of. I don't think she got kicked off the plane because she's black. I don't think she got kicked off the plane because of her political positions. I think she got kicked off the plane because a flight attendant decided that she was offended by the mask. That's why she got kicked off the plane, and that shouldn't be the way it is. Again, if you are going to mandate American Air that we go through this absurd, stupid exercise and that you guys get to be the ultimate arbiters without even bothering to ask if people have medical conditions or some other reason why they can't wear a mask, then like if someone's wearing a mask, leave them the F alone. If they boarded the plane, are wearing their mask, are not being disruptive, are not bothering anyone, conceivably you've got the plane spread out so people aren't even going to be looking at her mask anyway. What does it matter? Leave her alone. She goes on to say, I'm an abolitionist. I believe we need to defund and abolish the police. So she's like a far left activist, right? And this is what I find so ironic about this story. This is it right here, because what is the far left trying to do? They are trying to censor everyone that does not have an opinion that they share with them. They're trying to censor and cancel everyone. Listen, I had a whole bunch of socialists on Twitter trying to cancel me all day yesterday because I said something like a random off-the-cuff comment about my breakfast order not being delivered correctly. They tried to cancel me over it. Like, it's so stupid. And so as much as like I want to rip on American Airlines for doing this, it's also kind of like you get what you deserve, man. Like, you created this situation. If you're going to stand up for censorship and do that like against people that you disagree with, do not ever be surprised if it comes back to bite you in the butt. And this is exactly what they're talking about when they say it's a slippery slope. If you want free speech to actually exist in our society, then you have to defend the right of people to say things that you disagree with, that you find offensive. And I guess, you could make the case, well, American Airlines is a business. They don't need to serve people that do that. I suppose so. I mean, fine. But I'm not going to feel sorry when American Airlines goes bankrupt over nonsense like this and what they did to Brandon and basically them being really, really crappy at customer service. Let's keep going. She explained that she was in her seat wearing her new mask, so she was wearing the mask that the flight attendant gave her, when the flight attendant approached her again. She came back and stood over and said, I better not see that other masks, John said. And she replied, leave me alone, lady. She stood there and said, okay, I got you. I'm gonna be honest, if I was in her position, like, I'm just like envisioning a reality where when I go and get on this plane to go to LA on Friday, some flight attendant gets offended that I'm wearing a MAGA mask and tells me to cover it up, and then comes standing over me and says, I better not see that MAGA mask. I'd say exactly the same thing. It's none of your goddamn business. Leave me alone. I paid to be on this flight. John said the flight attendant speed walked to the front of the plane, and when she took out her phone, that's when she took out her phone and began recording. Minutes later, the plane returned to the gate and she was escorted off the plane. See, this is just absurd. This is ridiculous. This is flight attendants run amok. Like, you're a flight attendant. And yes, I have a deep appreciation for good flight attendants that that have good attitudes and that treat customers well. I really, really do. Anytime I have a great flight attendant, I make sure they know. I give them all the, I make sure it really does make a difference, especially for people who travel quite a bit. And, admittedly, I'm not doing as much of that these days, but having a good flight attendant really does make a difference, and so I really do value them when they're good. When they do crap like this, though, that is completely unnecessary, I just go like, what are you doing? It just makes no sense. An airline spokesperson sent Local 10 a statement saying the plane returned to the gate after Johns refused to follow crew members' instructions to remove or cover a face mask with offensive language, except that it seems like she was covering it, and the flight attendant just got a little bit too big for her britches. The airline said, although Johns initially complied, she later continued to display the inappropriate language. After arriving at the gate, the passenger was asked to deplane. So what? She's sitting in her seat. She's not bothering anyone else. Leave it alone. I mean, come on. Don't look at the mask if you don't like it. You've been one that's mandated that she wear a mask. So what? Grow up. Several officers escorted her through the airport and out the door. This is just unnecessary. This is so ridiculous. And this is what American Airlines is doing. And this is what happened to me, she said. Johns ultimately had to rent a car and drive to Illinois. She said other than the airline replying to one of her tweets about this, she hasn't heard at all from them. She has spoken to an attorney. The airline says it's still looking into the incident and it's refunding the unused portion of John's ticket. So again, I have to say, I don't agree with this person. I do not agree with this person on Black Lives Matter. I agree, okay, I'm going to be really careful here because this is one of the things that could get taken out of context. I agree with Black Lives Matter, the principle. If you say to me Black Lives Matter, I'm going to say, of course they matter. Of course. You have no disagreement from me. I do not agree with Black Lives Matter, the organization, for many reasons I'm not going to go into here. I do not agree at all with what she had on that mask, which is basically saying F the police. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with defunding the police. I don't agree with abolishing the police. However, for me, this is a speech issue. The clothing that we wear is an expression of our First Amendment rights. And if she wants to wear a mask with that message, I will absolutely defend her. She wasn't bothering anyone. It seemed as though she was sitting in her seat quietly, wasn't making a fuss, wasn't putting anyone on the flight in danger. The only crime that this woman committed is offending a flight attendant. And I'm sorry, again, I truly do value flight attendants that are very, very good at their jobs, but a flight attendant should not be the arbiter of what is acceptable speech. Period. End of conversation. So, moral of the story here is that American Airlines sucks. They hate free speech. And if you are going to be an activist that advocates for the censorship of people you disagree with, just wait until it happens to you. You're not going to like it so much, are you? All right, guys, that's all I've got. I'll see you soon.